Hello and welcome to FortiGuard Live. I'm Derek Manking. Joining me today once again is Amar Lakhani. It's always great to talk to you, Amar. How are you doing?
Man, I'm excited. We're back in conference season with
Yes.
RSA coming up. Black Hat is back in full swing this year. It's gonna be a pretty exciting year, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And adding to that excitement is no break, no rest for the wicked, as they say, right? Continue to see more and more activity that we're tracking. And I just wanted to talk to you about some of that too. Obviously, we talk about this every day internally with FortiGuard Labs and our analysts and the playbooks that we're following. But most recently, top of mind, we just released another outbreak alert on Felina, right, which is yet another breaking vulnerability. This was remote code execution, but actually arbitrary code execution, named after an area code, from what I understand, right?
Yeah, you know what? First of all, I think this was really interesting because it's essentially an Office vulnerability, and for the
Yeah.
most part, like how many times have we been like preaching to people like make sure you don't run macros, you don't click on
Yeah.
macros for Office, and attackers just found a way around that. As always, they're like, okay, you know what? People are getting a little smarter about this. Let's kind of use another method. In this case, they're using essentially a compatibilities checker, a error, a way to like diagnose errors to run executable code. And once you do that, once you run executable code, potentially an attacker can connect to your machine remotely and then run code. I think that's why we're calling it remote executable code.
Yeah. And so what you're just talking about is essentially the exploitation sequence, right? And like in order to do that, it's a matter of, again, this is when we assess risk, right? How big of an issue is this, right? And is it how many hoops do they have to go through in that exploitation chain? Is it as simple as remotely just pressing a button, launching that proof of concept, and owning the machine, or in this case, of course, like you said, you have to have actual some interaction with an application in that environment, like an Office document that calls the service, that gets the privilege escalation, that actually launches the attack, right? So those are things we look at when, and in this case, there are some extra who. It's not like the WannaCries of the world, which is a fully wormable, a remotely wormable routine, right?
Right. It's absolutely not what I would call a worm. That means it's not going to spread on its own. But how easy is it to spread? I think that depends on like how often do you open up like Office
Yeah,
documents that are
yeah,
not like signed or not coming from a trusted source. And I think that does happen fairly often to a lot of people. I mean, we do open up a lot of documents that could possibly be infected. So it's something that I wouldn't take lightly, especially since it is technically a 0 day, right? It's not a patch or a patch is being worked on that hasn't been fully tested yet. So that's always concerning when it comes out as a 0 day. Hopefully, by the time everyone's seeing this, there will be patches out.
yeah. So good news, bad news again, right? The good news is, yes, there are extra steps that the attackers have to go through. The bad news, as you said, it's 0 day. This has been out for a while. There's more eyes on this now, and look no further than Log4j, right? Anytime we get a lot of eyes on this, there's more proof of concepts created. There's more campaigns that start attacking that. So time is of the essence, of course, as always, but especially on these sort of outbreaks that are highlighted too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, we'll continue to monitor that. Of course, you can check out our outbreak alert. We'll post updates on Felina specifically and any other events that we see with that. What other trends are you seeing out there, Amar?
Well, it's funny. We always talk about trends, but it seems like it's always the things that we kind of like were concerned about in the past that we thought may have had the possibility of being weaponized or now being weaponized. There's always that kind of buildup, and then the
Yeah.
second thing is it's things that kind of were relevant in the past sometimes go away and become relevant again. For example, I know one of the things a lot of service providers are concerned about is BGP poisoning. There is some evidence of at least talk around BGP poisoning, especially when like redirecting traffic. I think with all the political things happening in the world, there's a lot of interest in like making sure traffic doesn't get to a certain country or a certain state. That's always scary. So I think some of these older attacks kind of making a comeback or trying to be weaponized against in a modern era is a little scary. I wouldn't say I never see things that are completely brand new. It's always a new way or a new implementation of things that we've already kind of known about or scared about.
Yeah, and that's why I'm always careful when I say, again, when talking about trends, I never say that the attack surface or the threat landscape is shifting, right? Because a shift indicates that they're abandoning their old methodologies. It's just like simple fishes in social engineering, right? It's really expanding, and they're including new, as you said, new methods of older attacks too. And like we see that with it's essentially modernizing these weapons, as you said. That's a good way of putting it, I think. We've seen that with new vehicles for older attacks, and we still see old attacks, old botnets, old CVEs that have been 5 to even in some cases 10 years old too. So it's a matter of, again, how they're picking that up and trying to modernize that, right? Put it into different vehicles.
Yeah, absolutely. We see like this resurrection of old attacks. When I think of it like the attack landscape, I don't think of it like as a timeline. I almost think of it as like a giant map, and there's like hot spots that come up once in a while. Remember that old arcade game where you're like smashing things, like little pop-up things? Yeah. I forgot the name of that, but that's kind
whack-a-mole.
Yeah, exactly.
Proverbial whack-a-mole, yeah.
Whack-a-mole, exactly.
Yeah, no, it really is living, breathing. It's an organism, right? And for that reason, yeah, some things can be dormant and then and come back. Absolutely. So but that's a really important point, right? I think that again, we have to always be ready for that. But again, as you said, a lot of these can be used in new applications. I mean, they can be, a lot of these old campaigns can be piggybacked on things like Follino, like the breaking vulnerabilities, right? But oftentimes we'll see old campaigns on that, which gets us into that whole, I know we've talked about it a lot, but that whole kill chain discussion, right? Defense in depth is not just about pinpointing one of these, but really understanding that whole exploit chain and where you can stop these attacks in their tracks too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we talk, a lot of people sometimes get disappointed. They're like, "Hey, we've known about these techniques for a while. Why can't we stop them all?" And it's not about just knowing the technique. It's knowing or understanding. Attackers getting creative on how they implement or actually do the initial attack on these techniques as well. But I think the kill chain obviously gives you multiple opportunities to stop those attacks. And multiple stages of that attack as well. So you can minimize or mitigate some of your risk. And that's why I think it's really important to kind of take the things like MITRE ATT&CK, take things like the Lockheed Martin kill chain, and operationalize those features as a defender to make sure that you are paying attention to like that whole life cycle of the attack and being able to stop that.
Yeah. And speaking of operationalize, let's talk about going back to the conference season, right? So RSA is here. And, in the past, we have seen themes, right? And words plastered all over the place. Machine learning, artificial intelligence. I mean, this was 4 years ago. There's always a theme, right? Since then, of course, there's been widespread adoption now of machine learning and artificial intelligence into various, security solutions. Of course, we got way ahead of that with Fortinet and FortiGuard Labs, nearly 10 years ago, where we started that. Putting it into various products and obviously have those all interoperating to be able to support that, that Lockheed Martin kill chain and supporting MITRE ATT&CK and all that you said too. And so that's led to our journey with federated machine learning and AI, but that's not actually new, right? We've done this before and we've seen, we've implemented this. So I'm curious, what we think we'll expect at RSA this year. I think, to me, one thing that comes to mind is obviously there's been a big change in the last 2 years in terms of work from anywhere, hybrid networks and environments now. And obviously, I think focus on security is going to be big, right? I think on the hybrid networks, not just on the hybrid networks and security, but again, why do you need that? Because of this organism we talked about, these old attacks that are coming in but being modernized to capitalize on attacks for hybrid networks, as an example.
Yeah, I know. Every time me and you go to RSA, we kind of do this walkthrough for the vendor area, and we always come back and say, "Hey, there was like this one theme that we saw over and over again, right?" And I don't know what that's going to be until we do that walkthrough. But my guess is that it will definitely include the hybrid workforce. And when I mean the hybrid workforce, not only work from home, but this shift, this rapid shift, to cloud-based infrastructure as well, and cloud-based applications. So I think we're going to see a combination of that because people, have shifted, at least to some degree, away from being in the office and having data centers in the basement of their organization to like spread out data centers globally, whether that's in the cloud or a hybrid environment and cloud environments. We're going to see that. I also think that, and as you said, we've been talking about AI for a long time. I felt like we were a little bit ahead of the game, but I think a lot of people are now catching up and understanding that to do true, infrastructure protection, especially when we're talking about something massive as the cloud with so much data, that there is going to have to be automation, and there has to be an AI component to that. So I see. I think that's if I was going to guess, I think that's the theme we're going to see walking around, is a lot of AI with a remote hybrid workforce protection capabilities.
Yeah, one thing, there are some things that we do know ahead of time, of course, too. So, of course, we do know that, getting back to the spirit of these in-person events and collaboration, all the partnerships that we contribute to and that we've founded, like Cyber Threat Alliance. Our research partnership with MITRE Ingenuity, the Center for Threat Informed Defense. The center is going to be there. Cyber Threat Alliance is going to be there. We have meetings with them, of course. So it's a lot of those very valuable in-person, events that are having to help drive innovation and that. So I'm quite excited about that. And then, of course, we have our talks, where John Madison, our CMO, is speaking. We're also both speaking there. So I have a keynote panel session on Thursday talking with the World Economic Forum. So that's also an innovation piece, right? Something, the what's new, how we're trying to map the cyber criminal ecosystem, not just technical IOCs, but how are cybercrime operations running, right? What's their operational model? What are their money laundering networks look like? What are the connections between those groups? All that sort of fascinating stuff we'll be talking about in that panel. And I know, Amar, you have a session as well too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'm really looking forward to your talk, because I'm always a fan of those shows, those spy shows, and it's always about going after the money and going after the motivation. So I can't wait to hear your panel. But mine is, the themes that you brought up of what's old is new again, and resurrecting old attacks. So my talk is resurrecting old botnets, how botnets never die. It's literally taking botnets that we thought were long gone from the world and seeing if we can resurrect them, and what kind of infections do we have in the world. Like, how many organizations are still infected with these botnets that are making callbacks to servers that don't exist anymore, and what happens if they do exist? Can you own them? Can you attack them? And what is the risk matrix on that?
Yeah, fascinating stuff. And you're right, botnets never die. We've learned that through FortiGuard Labs for sure, but I'm sure you have a lot of new insights. So I'm also really excited for your talks too, Amar. Really, you're always thinking ahead, which I love, and it's definitely be quite fascinating. So to all the listeners and viewers out there, you can check out our complete recap for RSA at our blog, our Fortinet blog, blog.fortinet.com. And in addition to Follina and all the other breaking security research we have, but we do have a full summary and recap for everything that's taking place, everything RSA. So I encourage you to check that out. Thanks, Amar, for talking to me again. I will look forward to seeing you at RSA. This is Derek Manky signing off with FortiGuard Live.